Hi everyone, Laura here from Mountain Mud Pottery. Today I'm going to do a video based on a question I had from a viewer. This person here was asking about centering and opening and pulling up the walls. She was having some issues with the walls being uneven thickness. So I'm going to do a video breaking down each step and I'll explain it in detail. Any other viewers having the same issue, hopefully this will help you. So I'm going to go now to the wheel and we'll get started. Okay, I'm ready to start now. So I have about 1.5 pounds of clay, and the first thing I'm going to do is try to put it on the wheel head as close to center as possible. So I give it a good smack down, and then as the wheel is spinning slowly, I'm just taking a little bit of the clay and pushing it down onto the wheel head to make the clay adhere to the wheel head better. And then before I wet my hands, I am going to run a dry finger along the bottom. And this just helps the clay mound stay on the wheel head better. Okay, now I'm going to be constantly wetting the clay. And I want to have it lubricated but not soaking wet. So this first part is called coning. I'm going to be coning up and down several times. And what that does is it's just a basic part of centering, and it also just gets the clay ready to open. So I'm going to be coning up and down. So now I'm going to explain in detail how I'm doing that. So I'm going to, again, just keep it lubricated. You don't want your hands sticking on it. What I do before I cone up is I make a little indent on the bottom of it. This is for two reasons. The clay eventually, if you keep coning up and down, will start to splay out on the wheel head, which then just gets very difficult to manage. So this way, I am addressing that right away, right from the start. It also gives me a place to put my hands on, because I want my hand right on the wheel head to start with. And a lot of beginners, I find, don't really want to put their hand on the wheel head. So what I do to start with is I'm wrapping my hands around the base of it. Equal pressure on both sides. My right hand is wrapped around first, my left hand is wrapped around on top of my right hand, and I'm squeezing quite hard and following it up. So it's like a toothpaste tube kind of idea where you're pushing from the bottom and it wants to come up. But I want to control how it comes up. So that is how I do up. Going down, I have my hand in a C around the top of the cone. My right hand, it's also a C, but I'm putting it over my left hand and on the top part of the cone. I'm going to be pushing with this hand kind of at 5 o'clock towards 11 o'clock. And it looks like I'm pushing with my right hand, but my left hand I'm also pushing, kind of equal pressure all the way down. This part I find people have trouble with, because you can't possibly get this hand further down than there, but it's not really addressing this bottom part. So with your left hand, as I'm pushing with my right hand, with my left hand I'm following it all the way down to the wheel head, and then hands off, and then repeat the process. Again, I'm making that reference point. Equal pressure with both hands. I come up, and also at the top you want to push your thumbs over the top to make it nice and smooth. If you don't, it just gets kind of pointy and messy. So that's important to always, at the top, push your thumbs over the top to make it nice and round. and then again to push down. See, the top actually almost goes over, and then it comes back down over and almost centers itself. So again, with my left hand, I'm following all the way down to the wheel head and take it off. It's good practice to do this 2 or 3 times to get it centered. So this, as you can see, is centered. There is no wobble there at all. So it's nicely centered. And it has to be centered before you open, or you can get uneven walls. You'll have it thick on one side and thin on the other. It's just not going to work. So it's very important to have it centered. So now I'm just going to bring this down a bit more so I can open it. So again, left hand is always supporting. You're always having both hands on it. Left hand supporting, right hand. So now just with the flat part of my whole hand, I'm just flattening the top. But I still want to follow it down. I always follow things up and down. It's important to get into that habit. So again, pushing it down, and now it's ready to open. So take your time with this part, and also keep your wheel head clean. Otherwise it just gets sloppy and messy and gets in the way. So this part, take your time. Don't rush into anything. Just take your time with everything. So here again, my left hand is holding it firm. My hands are always connected as much as possible. With my right hand, I just find the spot in the middle that just feels kind of calm and still. See, my finger's really not moving there. It's just very, very, very still and in the center. So this, I want my hand to be wet. So now I'm just pushing down and then stop the wheel. And then I'm going to just grab my pin tool to check the thickness on the bottom. So I put the pin tool right to the wheel head. I put my finger in and where the clay is at the bottom. So that's about 1/4 inch, and that is about perfect. You don't want it too thick, and you definitely don't want it too thin. So now again, I'm lubricating it, and now I'm going to go back in, and this part is very important to have your left hand stabilizing it. So now I am going to be pulling with my middle finger supported with these 2 other fingers. I'm going to be pulling straight towards me. So because I'm doing that, the mound is going to want to spread out. So I want to control it. So I'm just pulling. Again, you don't have to do it. Just do it slowly. And then just bring it straight across. So that's nicely opened. Just open up a little bit more. And then always, the first step you do once you open it is compress the bottom. And by doing this, you are helping to eliminate any cracking that happens. And also, it just makes a nice flat bottom surface. So I'm going to go over it just a few times. And just make sure, again, beginners I find don't really want to get in there. They just kind of do it on the surface but you want to get in there and move a bit of clay back and forth. So now the next step, I use a sponge for throwing. Some people use a cloth, some people just use their fingers, but I like using a sponge. It just kind of helps keep it moist as well. So now I'm going to start pulling up the walls. So you want to have water on both sides, inside and out, and you want it lubricated but not really wet. So I do the same thing on this, is I make an indent on the bottom. But first I'm actually going to just color this in a little bit. So as you're doing this process, you want it to be in this shape until your final shaping. You want to pull the walls up and make them thinner and taller, and then you'll do the final shaping. So at this point you want to keep it like that. So now I am just going to again get some water, lubricate the inside and outside. My first pull, I always do what is called a claw. So my fingers are like this and my thumb like that on the outside, right where I have that indent. And I'm going to be pushing, squeezing together and pulling up at the same time. And my right hand with the sponge is going to follow it. It's applying pressure too, but not as much. It's kind of supporting it. So it looks like this. And this first claw pull gets a lot of that thickness off the bottom right away. It is challenging. You've got all this thickness on the bottom and you're trying to pull it, all that thickness up. So it is a bit challenging. Every pull, you want to compress the rim. That makes it more stable, and just keep it even, because otherwise it can get away on you. If you don't do that, it'll get really uneven and really messy. So again, good practice to collar it in. This is called collaring. And compress the rim. And then I'm just going to add water again. I'm always going to be adding water and taking it out, because you don't want water pooling in the bottom. That'll weaken it and it'll be potential for cracks. Again, I'm making that indent. So now I've got my left hand basically inside, kind of holding it, stabilizing it, and now my right hand is going to be doing most of the pulling. So I've got my sponge under that indent, and you can see the clay, you can see it coming up. So even pressure all the way to the top. And again, you can compress either this way, these two fingers like that, and that finger on top, or wet your fingers like that, and that makes a nice compression as well. So I'm going to take the water out, and again, I'm going to then add more. So the way I'm doing this, it's running down my fingers on the inside and out. I always, though, as well, before I start anything, I run my finger down the bottom just to make sure it's all covered with a bit of water, and if it's not, just add a little bit more. Because if your fingers stick on it, it's just really hard to control it. So again, I'm going to make that indent. Get my sponge under there. And again, you can see the clay coming up. That little bit of clay there, I'm not too worried about. It's going to come off at the top. So then it's getting taller. I want to keep my hands connected as much as possible. So I take my hand out and then continue the process up to the top. And then compress the rim. So then you just continue like that until, there's about that much thickness on the bottom still. So I would do one more. So I can feel my hand sticking in the inside. So I'm just going to add a bit more water. Indent one more time. So again, I'm going to stop about there, move my hands, and follow it all the way up. So that is how you do it. And a couple of points also to mention. As you're centering, wheel head speed is fairly fast. And as you're pulling the walls up, you want the wheel head speed about medium. You don't want it as fast because the force will just make you lose it. So that is basically how you address centering and pulling up the walls. If you have any more questions, please feel free to comment and ask me, and I will try my best to explain it either in comments. If I feel it's warranting to do another video, I will address it in that way as well. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and please like and subscribe and follow me for more videos coming up soon.